Welcome back, guys. I'm Alistair Thomas, and today we're going to be looking at a summary of the oxygen intake graph using heart rate, a graph, heart rate versus time spent exercising. So we know that a pro athlete, an elite aerobic athlete, has a lower resting heart rate. This is because they have a larger stroke volume. So that means at rest, they can have a lower heart rate to fulfill the needs of the body. So around 50 beats per minute, or if not lower, would be their resting heart rate. So they've rested, they're resting for the first 6 minutes of this activity. Then after 6 minutes, what they do is they increase their pace to about 150 beats per minute, which maybe would equate to, let's say, about 12 kilometers an hour on the treadmill, if this was a treadmill test. Now, during that time, it takes a little bit of time for your body to bring in that oxygen from the air into the mouth and nose, into the lungs, diffuse through the alveoli, into the blood, and then supply it to the working muscles. So this period here where the demand of the exercise is not being met by the supply, we call that oxygen deficit. It's the time that it takes for the body to catch up. Now, we are still working under our anaerobic threshold. So our anaerobic threshold for an athlete who's about 20 would be around 185 beats per minute. So let's put that in there. That is what we call the anaerobic threshold. Anaerobic threshold. So that's the point where the anaerobic systems above this line, above 85%, the anaerobic energy systems are going to become the most dominant system supplying energy. They all supply energy at the same time, but above this point is when the anaerobic energy systems become the biggest supplier of energy. You need to keep that in mind. So when the athlete achieves this plateau or a straight line, we call that sometimes in phys ed, we call that a steady state. That means that the supply of oxygen is meeting the demand. So you need a certain amount of oxygen, but you're breathing in that amount of oxygen and supplying that to your muscles. So that is called a steady state. Now that can only be achieved underneath the anaerobic threshold. If the athlete was to increase their pace, say on the treadmill to about 20 kilometers an hour, that may breach their anaerobic threshold. So above this line here, they start to use their anaerobic systems, in particular their lactic acid system, which produces lactate, and that lactate fatigues your muscles. So staying above this line isn't possible for longer than, say, 90 seconds. So you've started to use the lactic acid system, which sometimes we call anaerobic anaerobic glycolysis, sometimes we refer to as that. So after 90 seconds, we have to reduce our pace so that we come back down underneath our anaerobic threshold. It's not sustainable to exercise at that level for long periods of time because we go through OBLA, the onset of blood lactic acid, which fatigues our muscles, makes us feel nauseous, and we have to slow down. So then when we've returned below this line after about 90 seconds, for different athletes, of course, it's different. If you're an extremely fit athlete, that's going to be longer. If you've not trained at all, that time is going to be shorter. So you return below this line. At 26 minutes, towards the end of the race, the athlete stopped. So what will happen then is his heart rate should return back to rest. And that time that it takes for the athlete to return back to rest, we call in phys ed, this chunk of time here, we refer to as oxygen debt. That's the debt that needs to be repaid of oxygen after the exercise is finished. So there's two reasons for that. The first reason for oxygen debt when we're recovering is called lactic acid debt. The reason for that is to repair ATP. And from previous videos, you might know that that takes about 3 minutes to repair the full 10 seconds of ATP required. The second reason is called lactic acid debt. The reason for that is to clear the lactate and the lactic acid from the muscles. in order for you to recover, so then you can perform again. So that's the second thing that happens. That takes a lot longer. For every 10 seconds that you use this system above this line, it's going to take you about 3 minutes to recover. So this is the oxygen intake graph, some of the concepts you need to be aware of, and that's about it. Thank you very much for watching.